Hey guys, I want to take a few minutes real quick before the show gets started to thank today's sponsor, Grace Transportation and Logistics. Grace TL is your premier transportation partner. Grace TL specializes in produce transportation and solutions. So if you need to gracefully move your perishable items in the U.S. and or Canada, give them a call at 520-203-8546 or check them out at their homepage at gracetl.com. Welcome, Credheads, to a very special episode of the Fresh Cred. For this episode, I had the pleasure of sitting down with Congressman Ruben Gallego. Congressman Gallego is currently running for an open senacy here in Arizona. Now, as most of you know, this is not a political podcast, and my interview with the congressman does not focus much on politics and or his race for the Senate. What it does focus on is his life's journey, how he got into politics, and how he's working to support farmers and fresh produce suppliers to ensure U.S. consumers have supply at a reasonable cost. The first part of the show looks at the congressman's life, how it started, his struggles, some of his missteps, his time as a Marine, building a successful PR career, and then switching back to public service as a politician. We close out our discussion talking border issues, his thoughts on tariffs, especially those related to produce, the water battles that Texas farmers are facing, and labor. I truly enjoyed my time with the congressman and our discussion. I think you all will as well. So settle in for a great show about someone truly living out the American dream. Hey there, Cred Heads. I am excited today to welcome you to a very special podcast on the heels of our recent special D.C. edition. I got to tell you, didn't expect to have this particular guest on coming out of our D.C. A special edition, but man, what a closing interview this is going to be. We're happy to be joined today by Congressman Ruben Gallego. Welcome to the show.
Gracias, thank you.
So glad to have you here. And, you know, Ruben, you and I don't know each other. Right. You know, we kind of came together through FBAA. They brought us together, and I thought, you know what? I'll reach out. What the hell? You never know what somebody might say yes to, and you said yes, so I'm super excited about that.
I am too.
Now, I got to tell you. So far. Exactly. We'll see, right? But I will have to tell you, you know, you're actually our second most famous guest I think we're going to have on the show.
Okay, who's the first?
Well, he's also hails from Phoenix as well.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of Martin Strel?
Martin Strel? I don't think so.
He is the man that swam the Amazon.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Across or all the way down?
All the way down. You know what?
That seems almost impossible.
When you're done with this, you've got to go listen to our podcast with Martin Strel. I'm telling you, CNN did a full-on report on this guy. He's in the process right now of swimming around the world.
Okay.
So he's in the effort to swim around the world. But anyway.
Well, I'm hoping to hit the elliptical today for 30 minutes, so... You know, we all got our personal records to look forward to.
Well, I'm with you on that. I tend to be a runner as opposed to anything else. I don't like running, but I do it just because.
I was in the Marines for 6 years where I was forced to run. After that, I was like,
Yeah. Well, that's a great segue into, you know, really where I want to start this off because, like I said, you and I just getting to know each other. And I do know through some quick research I did, you've got a fabulous story, right? And, you know,
thank you.
For me, right, as a person that, you know, runs a company and had the opportunities in this country to do a lot of things, you know, I look at politicians and I think, man, you know, how do you pick that career? How do you get in that space? But also, you know, I know based on my own self, there's a story, right? You know, what we see and the people we know today, right? That is how you get framed, right?
Yeah.
Nobody really knows, you know, the grind, the struggle, the difficulty. So I think real important, especially in your case, I'd like to know just a little bit about you and kind of how you got here, you know, as quick and as succinct as you can make. Yeah, and it's a little tough because, like I say, I've listened and you've got a lot going on.
Yeah, I'm very lucky to have lived a very, very rich life and really lived the American dream. I mean, so I'm the son of immigrants. My mom's from Colombia, my dad's from Chihuahua, Mexico. lucky enough to be born in this country, the best country in the world. After being being born, we moved to Mexico, actually. So we were back in Chihuahua, Mexico, lived on a farm out there. So kind of our cultural life is not too distant from me. Even after we moved back to the United States, I actually used to go back a lot to go help on the farms with my family and things of that nature. And,
what kind of farming did you guys do there?
They're largely subsistence farmers, which is why they eventually have to sell. But they were doing melons, tomatoes, beans.
Okay.
And they tried corn. I don't think we were very successful at corn also. But, they moved to the States after things went up. But they still have a lot of family there. And, came back to the United States. And, we lived a very working class lifestyle. My dad was a carpenter, along with, all the men in my family. I actually did a lot of that work, too, for a while. My mom was secretary. My father eventually kind of left the family, left the picture altogether, and so my mom raised us and my three sisters alone on a secretary's salary. So it was a little rough for a while.
Now, were you in Chicago at this point?
Chicago, yeah. Chicago, and then the south suburb of Chicago called Evergreen Park.
Okay.
And so she moved us into a small apartment. I slept on the living room floor for almost 7 years until I went to college. When I went to college, that was the first bed I had in 7 years. And, I don't say that for people to feel pity on me, but just kind of tell you about, the world that I lived in was not the easiest world, and it motivated me to do well. And so I knew that I wasn't going to be able to rely on my family to pay for college. I knew that I was a smart kid and that I can work hard, and I decided to get myself a scholarship, and I was going to try to get the best colleges that I could. I put a plan together, and I got great grades, and scored very well on all my exams, and then applied to Harvard. Got accepted to Harvard, and they gave me almost a full ride. And so got there, and it wasn't an easy transition when you're going from that world where beds are luxuries to you're having roommates that are complaining about the fact they have bunk beds.
Yeah,
it's a totally different world. And I was very happy when I saw my bunk bed. Had to take a break. I actually got kicked out of Harvard for a little bit, and
so now I heard about that.
Yeah.
So and I think it was educational reasons, but was it anything more salacious than education? Did you get crazy at a party or something?
Oh, I got crazy too at a party, but that's not the reason why. No, the real reason why is just because I was just not mature enough for college at this point. I was so focused on helping my family raise my sisters. I was going to work all the time when I was in high school. I worked every job you could ever think of. That I just wasn't ready for college.
Right.
And they asked me to leave, and I used that time to join the Marine Corps.
Okay.
Because it's something I always wanted to do, always wanted to pay my country because they gave me so many opportunities. And just decided to not be a hero, nothing crazy, join the Marine Reserves, infantry. And this is all before 9/11. And, war came, and I didn't look for it, but I fulfilled my duty to my country and honored my oath. And unfortunately, my unit saw some of the hardest days of combat in the war, and we ended up taking the most casualties of the war. So 1/3 of my company was either killed or wounded, which in modern warfare for the United States is it's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot. So and returned from the war, with PTSD, trying to readjust to life, and did fairly well for a while, but it was still very difficult. But really, it drove me to be more involved, serve my country in a different way, trying to help veterans, because a lot of us were really, getting screwed by the government at that point. And, it really, started me on this kind of trajectory of service to the country again.
Yeah, and for me, it's like I say, that kind of story, and realistically, this show's not a political show,
No.
right? But you're a politician, and so therefore there will likely be political stuff discussed,
of course,
or it wouldn't be a show. But for me, everybody's not going to agree with your opinions or the way you look at it.
Right. I would hope not. This is America. We don't have to.
Well, no, but I guess for me, people today, we lose sight, right? I mean, that struggle that you talk about, right? I mean, and you're not looking for the empathy, but I think what's important to me is it's an example, right? I mean, we in this country, we need to look and I don't know, for me, I think I had a great parents, and my whole I won the lottery from the very beginning. We were definitely not rich. Right. Grew up in a 900 square foot house with 6 people. I mean, it was small beginnings, but that had nothing to do with my lottery ticket. First lottery ticket, being born in this country. Second, the parents that I had.
Biggest key of success there.
Yeah, but that being said, it's like there are people right today, right, that you're going, you've gone to D.C., you're going to help, that are you, right? Mm-hmm. And to me, your story of how you overcame adversity at every turn. You had a vision. Life did not fall into place every time, did it? Right?
No.
So I guess for nothing else, from this conversation we had, I really want people to take that away from, not your politics, not what's going on. It's like, look, this is a guy in life that started out where a lot of people in this country are, but he made his way. Right, he made his way. You got his direction, and to me, that's again, when I listened to what I heard, that was when I got excited about even doing the show. All the other stuff we're going to talk about, the most important thing to me is your example as how you can overcome adversity. And then the other side of that is your service to the country, for crying out loud. Mm. I mean, and those I'm sure friends of yours that lost their life, for crying out loud. Yeah. I mean. We in this country, and I'll speak, we don't give that enough credence and credibility, right? And so thank you for that, because none of us are here without guys like yourself.
It's my pleasure. It's the biggest honor I ever got to do. Like
Grace TL, your trusted partner for fresh produce transportation from all major ports bringing in Mexican produce. Specializing in perishable freight, especially fresh produce, we understand the importance of temperature, timing, and care. Shipping from South Texas, Southern Arizona, and Southern California, we deliver fresh produce to major U.S. and Canadian retailers, ensuring your goods arrive fresh and on time. Our bilingual team provides honest, consistent communication, making your shipping experience simple and problem-free. With expertise in end-to-end supply chain management, we handle the complexities so you can focus on what you do best. Grace TL, specialists in fresh produce logistics. Partner with us for seamless, reliable transportation. Visit gracetl.com today.
In my country, it's I'm still friends with like so many of those guys. It's like having another family.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
So look, you came through all that. You were in Chicago. You went to Harvard, which, by the way, that in itself has got to be a challenge. And then you come here. When did you get to Arizona?
2005. Actually, after my last tour of duty, which was Iraq, I moved here.
Okay. So what drove you to come to Arizona?
I followed my girlfriend out here.
There you go.
And so yeah, it was leaving the war. I wasn't ready to go to work. I was just not in the frame of mind, and so my girlfriend had moved here, and so I moved in with her to try to just basically put myself back together and try to make normal life, whatever that is.
So 2005. You get in the PR business then, I mean, that's... I
get in the PR business, trying to do like, look, I'll be honest, I was pissed. I was just so pissed at politicians. I was so mad.
That's where I find myself, so good.
So trust me, I see eye to eye with a lot of Americans, even when I'm like, when I'm looking at myself in the mirror, like, in the war, we didn't have the proper armor. We were outnumbered. It was a very, very hard war. And then we get back and like, the VA wasn't ready for us. We were all suffering PTSD. We weren't getting our services. We weren't getting claims. Some of like my guys, were threatening suicide. You had a lot of alcoholism, a lot of homelessness, and like I was just so mad, and so I was hopping mad, and then I started talking to politicians like, hey, this is what you got to fix, what we got to do,
right? And
just kind of evolved from there. And I really just wanted to make money. Actually, when I got out, I wanted to stay away from politics. I wanted to, live a really normal American life, and honestly, just be rich with my kids and everything, right? And eventually, it was so much that needed to get done and I was getting so frustrated that I finally had to get myself more and more involved. And once you start that slippery slope, then you just got to keep going.
Right. Right. Well, that's interesting. So that you moved into PR.
Yep.
Successful in that.
Yeah.
And then, was it 2010?
2010, ran for the State House, yeah.
Ran for the State House. Now, first office that you ran for?
First office I ran for, yep.
And
won.
I was going to say, how'd you do? You won that?
It's easy. It's funny. The funny part is, it was the stuff I learned in the Marine Corps that made it easy for me to win. Because, the Marines, everyone thinks we're just a bunch of hotheads, right? They actually also teach you how to be very organized and very disciplined.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that you're a businessman, you understand that. The biggest predictor of success is planning and organization and execution.
Yeah.
Right? Those three simple things. When you work on some campaigns, this is why I became very successful. It was I did the first two steps: plan, organize, and execute.
Yeah.
And people were just shocked, right? And so I did it in a very, in a just dispassionate way without any emotion to it, objective, right?
Yeah.
You need to knock X amount of doors. I need to knock X amount of doors. These are how many days I have to knock those doors. This is how many doors I had to hit every hour. What's the most efficient way for me to do this? And that's what I did it. And so I was very unknown when I first ran for the State House. I ran against a lot of very well-known people, and I shocked a lot of people when I came in first place but I just outworked everybody.
Yeah.
And also being used to going door to door in Iraq in that heat, going door to door in South Phoenix, which is not that much harder for me, except I don't have to wear body armor,
yeah,
a helmet, and carry about 80 to 100 pounds worth of gear.
Gotcha. Yeah, and there's no doubt. I mean, you talk about that. Yeah, Mason can't speak in, but execution. You can have the greatest plan in the world,
right?
But if you can't execute against it,
right, nothing.
It's worthless, right? Yeah, and so
use it to rat fish, as we used to say,
for sure. Yeah. So that's good counsel for anybody out there, listening. I mean, that is a process. You need a process, and you need that lined out to make things happen.
In the Marines, they call it the order of operations.
Okay.
Always think about the order of operations. So start from where you want to end, then work your way backwards. And then once you work your way backwards, then the first step is the most important step.
Yeah. No, absolutely, for sure. So all right, so state rep.
Yeah.
And then on to D.C., right?
To Congress.
What year did you go?
2015 is when I got there, and 2014.
2014.
Yeah.
Okay. And Congress, what was it like when you got there, right? Because here's this guy looking on the outside in, right? And the business world's very easy in comparison, in my opinion, to operate in because it's very binary. It's either make money or don't make money.
Right. And also, you have interests, right? You have a shared interest with somebody else, right?
Yes.
You both want to make money.
Yeah.
Right? In Congress, there's not necessarily a shared interest in success.
Yeah.
Right. As Americans, you should, but there is a shared interest for you to screw someone else over in order for you to be able to succeed later, right? And so that's where you're okay, so we both know that we all come out better at this, but you're looking at 6 years, 8 years down the road, so you'll stop something from a movement that affects Americans every day, that affects everyday people, and so that's a very different world. It's a very different world. It's a very odd world. It's not normal.
Yeah, I mean, so that's when I get into it and look at it. And like I say, I've been going to D.C. annually with our IFPA group and since 1999.
Right.
And in '99 I was much younger, had black hair.
Look better with gray.
Do you think?
I think so.
Well, I appreciate that.
More mine's coming in.
I don't have a choice. It's just let it turn whatever color. Just don't let it turn loose.
I got an 11-month old girl, so the gray's coming now. So,
congrats on the 11 month.
And a 7-year-old boy too. Yeah.
Very nice, very nice. But yeah, I mean, but you go right, and I go in with these. We were working at that time on what's called the WIC program, Women, Infant, and Children. Yeah. And at the time, fresh fruits and vegetables were not part of that.
It's crazy.
Right?
Think about that. Yeah.
So literally, I'm thinking this should be a no-brainer. We're going to go up on the Hill. We're going to do our lobbying effort. It was 10 years later
Oh yeah.
before we ever got anything done.
That's lightning speed in Congress. Right? So,
You got to have an issue that, but I'm thinking, and I had a conversation, I sat down with the CEO of IFPA last week when we were in D.C., we were talking, and some of the things that we're talking about, I'm like, I don't understand. How can we have opposition to some of this stuff? But, I mean,
gets entrenched, yeah.
It gets entrenched, and and like I say, so Congress, you get there, and then does it sometimes become about, that becomes your job, and then it becomes like the security of keeping your job. Is that kind of how it goes? I mean, what happens? Because I know everybody goes with good intentions, or most everybody goes.
It just depends who you are. I mean, I think for me, it was easier to just do the right thing. I mean, honestly, just because once you've been through the experiences I've been through, you just know who you are as a person, right? And I mean, I think no matter what world you're working in, whether it's nonprofit world, business world, or politics, knowing who you are at the core helps you make some decisions that are just going to be better, or at least could be truer, right? And it depends where the people, how they're affected by it is different. But I don't think you have to answer. I just never felt that I had to hedge as much as other politicians. Trust me, a lot of my staff that are now they're running for Senate, God, I wish you had hedged back in the day. But I had to keep true to myself, and sometimes you just have to put your head down and keep working. And a lot of things that happen in D.C. are because the status quo is easy, right? I always say the most powerful lobby, right, of all the lobbyists in D.C., the lobbying group, right? Do you know what the most powerful lobby is? If you had to guess,
it's definitely not fresh produce. So,
no, take another guess.
Yeah, I'm going to say the dairy industry.
Dairy industry. Okay, no, the most powerful lobby is the status quo.
Oh,
and here's why: because status quo is easy, right? So the status quo, everyone could just say, let's not do anything.
Right.
It'll keep everybody happy. And if someone wants you to change something, you'd be like, can't. It's so hard. This is how it's been forever, right? And so that's why I think so. That's why, adding fresh produce to the WIC program took 10 years. Even though, especially for a lot of kids in urban communities, if you don't give WIC, if fresh produce isn't covered by WIC, those families are not going to buy it.
Yeah,
they're not going to buy it because they don't have the extra bandwidth in terms of elasticity, in terms of their be able to buy. So what are they going to do? They're just going to buy the processed stuff that they need, that's cheaper and doesn't spoil as fast, right?
Yep.
And so that's what happened for those 10 years. There wasn't an anti-fresh produce movement. It was just the fact that they have been doing it forever.
It's interesting concept that you say status quo being, as I sit here and think about that, because, realistically, once you take a position, even if it's for could be the greatest thing in the world, there's going to be an opposition, and you're going to become a lightning rod and be a villain at some point, right?
Or not even lightning rod. Sometimes it's you're the road bump, right, into whatever else is going on. Or sometimes, this is the other thing. It's I think we also don't allow politicians to grow, right? It's okay for you to say, that's what I thought, and now after years of experience and seeing how things have changed, this is where I'm moving to, right? And sometimes people are get entrenched in either old way thinkings or they're afraid of moving for some reason, right? Because I'm sure there was some people that said, well, I don't want to add fresh produce because that means I could probably come up with a gazillion reasons why. That means that this is going to reduce their ability to get protein, right, or something else of that nature. And so, a lot of times the logic isn't necessarily the reason why people are stopping it. It's just the stiffness of people even changing.
Well, and I'll put my cynical hat on and just say, everything eventually is tied back to money. And let's face it, in the WIC program,
right,
if you don't need to include anybody else that's going to take those revenues and move them somewhere else,
correct.
If you're the dairy industry,
that's less of your pie.
And so, at the end of the day, for them, they're not motivated from what they're supposed to be doing, which is making money for the dairy industry. They're not motivated to get fewer of those dollars move to fresh produce. So we have to realize that in all situations, for me, right, I mean, we have to look at it as like somebody is giving up something for you to be part, even if it makes sense.
Somebody's sacred cow.
Yeah, I mean, it is. But no, that was pretty good, though. So that's interesting. So, out of that, status quo is the biggest lobbyist, strongest lobbyist, and that's something for sure to take away because, and honestly, the voting public, we're all guilty of our own self-interest, right?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, you can't blame the voting public because, like, the voting public, I'll tell you, the voting public is where where reality is. The politicians don't actually usually match where the voting public is, right? And like I've seen this for years when it comes to immigration, when it comes to the economy, a lot of stuff. We're usually years behind where the actual, what you call it, say, people on the street are, and that's a very frustrating thing, especially if you know better. Like I guess again, maybe I'm just a cynic, but I would think that the voting public is not. You'd be surprised.
On point.
Yeah, not all. I would say, look, they're not always on point, but they're more on point than we think. Like if you look at immigration reform, the voting public is actually more pro-immigration reform than you see in the House or the Senate. They're also more understanding about border security than they are in the House and the Senate. And what happens in the House and the Senate is like we don't allow nuance, right? You can't be both for border security and for immigration reform, which that's where a lot of Americans are. But then you go in the House or the Senate, Democrats or Republicans, you're either going to be one or the other. For some reason, you can't have both, which I think you can.
Yeah.
But you don't see a lot of that reflected in people and how people deal with the border and talk about the border. Or we're talking about immigration.
Well, in immigration, for me, running a produce business, being in this industry for 30 years, it's been very frustrating for me. I was in D.C. when George Bush put through his immigration.
Which one? Which George Bush?
Well, George W. Yeah. So W, when he put through, gosh, I can't remember the congressman's name, Dick Armey. I was actually on the flight with Dick Armey after. So they literally, Dick had left out. He was a North Texas congressman, and he had left out, become a lobbyist like most everybody does there. But anyway, I'm on a flight with him, and I'm like, because his own party just destroyed him.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it was probably the thing that the legacy that is really a black mark on W within his own party. Again,
it wasn't him.
Yeah, it wasn't him. But and I just couldn't find. I was amazed at that. Right. I was amazed that. Why? And that's why I was asking Dick Armey on the pod. I was like,
they just did that not too long ago, like when Rubio was pushing it, and then they ended up.
And then they ended up killing that. Yeah. And I was asking Armey at that time. It made zero sense to me. And he's like, I don't know exactly who's making money on this deal. But he's like, and he was a lobbyist, like I say, he was a Republican. Yeah. He's like, I'm not sure who's making money on it at this time. Yeah. He's like, but somebody is.
Yeah, or money, or power.
Or something.
Power,
Right, and so it was just a weird deal for me because it's a thing that, like you say, for the country, right, if people really understood, we've got a 4% unemployment. Mm-hmm. If you look back at the unemployment numbers since 2016, so before the pandemic, if you look at our unemployment numbers have been sub 5%.
Yep.
For since 2016, like I say, not counting the pandemic, which was an outlier, but that was in my day when I, growing up in economics. 4% was full employment.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So we've been close and sub 5%. As a country, we don't have enough people to do the jobs, much less to do the agricultural work in the restaurants,
construction,
and all those things, right?
I know. Yeah. And I mean, look, we have an inflationary problem still. In part, not everything is going to be fixed, but if you have a well-functioning guest worker program, that would actually keep inflation, down closer to the 2% mark that the Fed Reserve wants, right? It's going to be difficult for us to get, interest rates down or, the rate down to the 2% mark for the Fed Reserve while also having 4% unemployment. the worst thing you could do is try to get higher than 4%, because you go to 5%. Now you're putting millions of people into poverty. So the best way to do it is to have a very good, flexible, visa worker program, whether it's on the ag side or other temp construction jobs, seasonal jobs, whatever it is. That's kind of a way for actually us to have a little elasticity, a little, I would say, give to make sure that we can bring interest rates down in that regard.
Yeah, and people don't. I mean, for me, it's like you don't understand. The GDP, for it to grow, right? You have to have a growing population. You got to have more people consuming stuff.
That's the only way you grow productivity. Yeah.
And so that's kind of how it works. The more people you bring in, right? Because we got a population that, if you look at it, the birth rate has declined significantly. Yeah. It's, in China is already, I don't think they're below zero, but they're basically at a flat line, right? And the whole globe is going that on a birth rate is that. But the U.S., I don't know. It's just like we're doing things to almost shoot ourselves in the foot when I look at it. And I don't understand what's the vested interest. What is it? Just because the chaos creates another economic on a different level or something?
No, I think that there's an opportunity. People gain power through two types of way, right?
Okay.
You hope and aspirations and inspiration, or fear and chaos. If you can't do it this way, and there's some people that just can't do it, then they'll do it through fear and chaos. Even though we know that legal immigration done correctly, bringing skilled labor to this country in markets and economies that need it, can be a very big help. It is both great for the economy, great for our national security, and over the long term, great for us not to have a declining birth rate. And look, I see this all over. I go all over the state. One of the biggest things I hear about complaints, especially from working class women, is childcare. Mm-hmm. Not enough childcare workers, right? If you go to childcare centers, they're like, I'd love to lower my prices, but I can't afford it. This is the kind of staff I could only attract, and even when they come, they work for me for a year, then they move on, right? When we could be working with some of these countries from all over the world, having a very good visa worker program where we get qualified workers that that go through a background check, pay a fee, and we'll give them a 2-year worker visa. And if they keep their nose clean, I'm sure you have some of the H-2A visas that work for you. 99.9% of them are good people, not causing any problems. After 2 years, all right, then we'll give you another 2-year extension. And these are the kind of thing we should be doing instead of dealing with this a system that's really broken right now. If you want to come here legally, it is very difficult for you to come to this country legally, which is very dumb. We're lucky that people want to come to this country. There are people all over the world that are leaving countries.
Oh,
right?
For sure.
You're a great country when people want to come here. Yeah. Right. No one's trying to break into China, right?
No, for sure.
Trying to break into Russia, right? It's like that tells you what we have a superpower in that sense. But we have to figure out how to do it correctly.
Well, and that's my thing is people that haven't been out of this country or have not been to Mexico. I've been to Honduras. I've been to Mexico. I've been to Guatemala. If you haven't seen what real strife and poverty is, you have no idea what they will go to for the links for themselves, but more importantly for the kids. Quite often, it's the same thing people in this country would do. I told them, for me, I tend to, I find myself, I'm that voter that you're looking for. I find myself in that middle. I tend to lean on quite a few things on a conservative level, and then there's other places.
I think it's where most Americans are.
I do. That's what I'm saying. So most of us reside here, but for us, it feels like nobody gets us, right? But what I was going to say is, I don't care how tall you build the wall. I don't care what you do, right? In terms of it's so bad quite often where these folks are coming from that they will risk their life at whatever, and understandably so, because the life that they're walking away from is not a life at all. It is worth that, it's extremely sad that is a situation. It's even worse that we as a group of people, that we've built such a great thing that, we don't try and look for ways to how do we share that, because it only gets better for us. It only expands us all. So,
well, I mean, the thing is, there's like two things we always should be thinking about. Is number one, how do we get them legally here, right? Number two, how do we also expand our, global reach to there, right?
Yeah.
One of the things that was very frustrating during COVID, talking to all these businesses, they're like, we need all of our stuff is stuck overseas. Like, when we mean overseas, like they wouldn't say overseas. Like, where is it stuck overseas? So, like, what do you mean? Like, it's overseas. I felt like I don't know if you ever seen Coming to America. There's like, where's the suit? Where's the spit? Where's the spit? Like, where's it? Like our facilities in China. I'm like, well, you why don't you place it in Colombia? Why don't you place it in Honduras? Why don't you place it in Guatemala? No, you went to China when you could have had easy, safe transit, less than a day by boat, or a little longer than that, obviously. But but you went all over there, and now you're wondering like how you get stuff across during this very dire straits. And so the reshoring of our overseas markets it's happening in the Western Hemisphere. It's going to be a big deal. And I just wish we can, American business can actually expand on that, because if you bring stable American businesses and jobs that they need to be produced somewhere else anyway, you're going to have less of those flows coming up.
Yeah.
Right. And then for those that we need, that are coming, we don't want them to go to the border. Like that border, and I've been down to the border in Yuma a lot. It's amazing. It's a great economic engine. The amount of commerce that comes through that, but then it gets interrupted by asylum seekers, right? But let's figure out a better way to do this, let's stop the abuse of the asylum system, because most of them just want to come here and work, right? So let's do this a very legal way. You wait your turn, get a visa, do a background check, pay your fee, and then you could come, right? To a certain limit of caps. That's I think a smarter system that we're not even like attempting to do.
No, and again, anything that's logical gets just completely shot down as being radically another way. And again, I mean, we could go on and we could debate that. And again, I think
I always say it's like when we talk about border security, we also need to be talking about border trade. They you can't have one without the other. No, like you need to be able to do both. And again, if you want to have a great country with the greatest economy in the world, you need to be able to do both and do it well. Right now, we're not doing either well.
Well, I mean, the other thing too, and this will probably get me shot.
You're gonna get canceled.
Yeah, I'll get canceled. This will probably get canceled. Well, I asked this one of the guys that worked for me. I was over in South Texas, and and I was like, I live on a board. I work 10 minutes from it, whatever. And it's like, how's life different? I mean, if you didn't know there was an immigration problem, what do you notice different about South? He's talking about that. I was like, no, what's your life? I honestly, literally, if it wasn't in the news, right? I know there's an issue, and I know we've got all these asylums. But in terms of this chaos and this craziness going on at the border, like I say, we have people that cross every day. They come back and forth and go to work and do all those things. It's like, the whole narrative is like that. Like there's Armageddon down here at the border, and it's just like that seems crazy to me.
I mean, like it's like we have so many different versions of the border, right? There's the version that you and I know, which is like the Mexican nationals that cross over every day with their visas to go work, whether it's the fields, the factories, whatever it is, and then cross back legally. We have no problems with them. Like we rely on that labor. Then we do have, I would say it may not impact a lot of people that are here because a lot of them pass through, right? They just pass right through. But the asylum seekers and what the abuse of the system is chaos. And I think most Americans just look at that and say, like, I don't like that. And because inherently to them, they want to see a just program. They want to see order, and not seeing it is a problem. But I also think like we have to be very realistic that, we have so many people coming that we're not necessarily assuring safety. And I think an orderly way to do this is to make sure that, people are asking without going in between ports of entries, going to consulates in their home country, going through background checks so we could actually thoroughly check these people. And I think that's what would make people feel more comfortable. Doesn't mean that people aren't fear mongering. There's a lot of fear mongering that's happening here, and that's the thing that I dislike. And I'm not going to mention my opponent's name because I don't want to get too political. Is that they never talk about the border also as a positive.
Yeah,
the trade, the culture. You like come down and meet the families in Nogales and San Luis. In Somerton. The people that have been here for hundreds of years, the people that have, a real experience with the border and can tell you the benefits and can actually tell you realistically, like, hey, this is where we need some help. Like, you know what? Actually, in this area, we do need a border wall. But in this area, we actually need more ports of entry so we could check everything, get business coming more forward. This is the kind of thing that politicians skip because they want to either be in full denial that nothing's wrong.
Yeah.
Or the opposite. They want to be in like the full fear-mongering role and not actually come up with solutions. So I know I'm getting the wrap out because we got to get up the hill. But
okay, I got you. Well, I do want to touch on a couple of things. One, let's real quick. I mean, you've done a couple of things as it relates to immigration, right? So I think that's important. I know you've signed off on the bill. What is Direct Hire Act?
So Direct Hire Act is to give power to Border Patrol and Customs for them to actually hire somebody from the community that they're serving. So if you look at if you talk to Customs and Border Patrol, it takes forever for them to get someone through the system, which is the recruitment, background check, and then boot camp. Okay. And then get them placed into their first service location. And so what this does, it would give local, essentially commanders, the capability to go into the community. And if there's a police officer that's retiring and say, hey, do you want to come work Customs for a couple weeks, right? Or a couple years so you hit your retirement. Or, be able to bring somebody in and give them on-the-job training. And then when they have free time, go put them back into the academy. That is it's a way for us to actually deal with like the backlog of Border Patrol that we need and Customs because we need more of them, but it takes forever to get them through the pipeline. And especially now when we have so many people that are rushing to the border to claim asylum, it's hurting us. Yeah.
No, for sure, and I thought that's important because for me at least, you're working on things. Where does that look? Does it look like it's gonna? Where is it at?
It's got movement on it. I think it's one of those things that will be probably packaged in a bigger kind of bill to deal with like border security.
Okay, all right. So a couple of things before you get out of here because that's me and you went off on a tangent, the show was absolutely nothing where I figured it was going to go, but that's okay. It was still. But I do want to know, we talked about fresh produce. Yeah. We've had the tomato suspension agreement. From that, a couple of years ago, they brought in cucumbers and squash. So, but ultimately, where are you at as it relates to tariffs and restrictions on imports?
Generally speaking, tariffs have to be used as a last resort. And they have to be used in a manner that's not retaliatory or to skew the market, right? So one of the reasons why, for example, I'm against the tomato efforts from the Florida growers, right, and for the waiver, is because it's not that I think the Florida growers, tomato growers, by some nature, think that the products from Mexico are inferior of any sort. Yeah. Or somehow that we need to impose tariffs because there's some level of market incongruity that's being done because Mexico is overproducing and dumping tomatoes.
Dumping, right? Basically they're claiming dumping.
So, like, for example, if China or Japan does too much production of steel, then they just dump it and kill our market. Okay, that's a good answer to tariffs, right? So you equalize. But what I see when it comes to, like, for example, the efforts to raise the tariffs on tomatoes is like the Florida growers just want an opportunity for them to be able to have a reason to dominate the market more. And if you take out Mexican tomatoes being imported here, then there's going to be more Florida tomatoes get put into the mix and they get to dominate, raise potentially the price of it, definitely raise their profits. But at the end of the day, the consumer ends up receiving the pass-through tax of tariffs on that. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, for sure.
So on two ways, either A, they're just going to tax more on the tomato coming from Mexico, or the consumer is going to end up paying more at the shelf because there's just less competition. And so this is why I got really involved in the, I would call it tomato wars, because it does affect the consumer at the end of the day. It's an inflationary cost, and it's not just obviously for your fresh tomato, but everything that a tomato goes into, your pizza sauce, your spaghetti sauce, your mixed greens, everything else you can think of. So that's where I think of, the tariffs should be a last resort, and they should be a largely reactionary measure that the United States uses to protect markets, not to give advantage to markets.
Right. Last thing we'll touch on real quick, because it does relate to produce. It's certainly some good friends of mine in South Texas, farmers there, likely their crops are going to be reduced due to lack of water. Not to get into the whole background, 1944 treaty between Mexico and the U.S.
The
Rio Grande water system, and Mexico's behind. Honestly, I'm not sure there is a resolution. Right now, there's Texas... there's some of the Texas politicians are pushing the Biden administration to withhold aid to Mexico. I don't know that Mexico even has the water release, but I mean, any insight, any thoughts on? I mean, I don't even know what a good solution would be outside of a bunch of rain, and I'm not sure you have that control.
The solution in the meantime is to help the farmers through compensation, and here's why you should do that, because this is a failure of several administrations, right? This should have been handled before. The problem is when you're dealing with cross-border water, this ends up falling within the State Department purview. The State Department doesn't want to deal with water. They want to deal with the big stuff.
Yeah.
Right? And the fact is that they're not putting the people to deal with this on a daily basis, whether it's under the Trump administration or under the Biden administration. And they should be dealing with this. This is going to hurt those farmers down there. And it's extremely important because, you do have changes of administration that happen on both sides, right? So if you don't actually have an active, treaty enforcement mechanism, especially for things like this, when administrations change, then it just goes back down to the wayside, right? So not just us, but also, this is happening under López Obrador. God knows where this is going to be in terms of the priorities for Sheinbaum. Do I think we have to put some type of pressure on Mexico? Absolutely. This is what you're supposed to do, especially when you're representing U.S. interests. But it also means you have to have consistent presence because if your opposition, the foreign government you're negotiating with, knows that this is like not even remotely up there on your priorities list, they're just going to wait you out. And that's where our farmers get screwed when that kind of stuff happens. And it sucks. Like this, sometimes this is the kind of thing that should be really under the purview of trade versus the Trade Department versus the State Department, because they're just better adept in thinking about this kind of stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and just water, I mean, they've said for years is going to be the next gold. I mean, Mexico is up under the gun for access to water as well as here in the States. And it's only become a bigger problem, over the long time. So, look, it's been outstanding. Again, I got a ton of stuff we could have covered. Maybe we can get to do once you win office. Maybe we can review, and then I can actually give you a list of all the things that we need done for the produce.
We'll do it in my office.
Yeah, we'll do it in your office. But no, certainly appreciate it. But I do want to leave, with the folks listening. I think the takeaway is real importantly, and again, it's primarily a produce based. I have a feeling that maybe some people not in the produce might listen to this, but for those folks that I typically speak to, and particularly the ones here in Arizona, number one, I go back to your story, right? I mean, guys, we're sending people to Washington to represent. I think you've got a great story, and I think people need to know and understand, where you came from and how you got to where you're at today. But then when you take a look at it, I mean, immigration is something that we need somebody doing something with. It needs to be not just the status quo, right? We don't need to appease that lobbyist group. Agriculture, I know, based on some of the stuff that I looked at, and just based on what you've been doing, agriculture is important. It's not just U.S. ag, but it's also the Mexico ag. It's the near shoring of products and stuff. We got to have it.
Yep.
We've got to have that. It's got to be there. And you know what, folks? If we don't have the labor here in the United States, we're not going to get crops out of the ground. We're not going to get crops shipped, and we're not going to get restaurants served. And so processed, all the things.
I worked at a meat packing factory, so.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. We go in another. We could, and then last, like I say, the water issues, but just realistically, you're focused on a lot of really good things that relate to produce and that can be important for us. So I appreciate you coming in, taking the time to talk about it. And like I say, hopefully we get a chance to do this again soon. Yeah. But I wish you the best of luck. Gracias. I mean, you know what? With your Marine background and your process, I feel like that you'll probably find success again. But
right. Well, ojalá. But we'll keep working and we'll get there. We will get there.
All right.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Safe drive back to Phoenix, brother.
Yeah, adios.
Take care. See you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this insightful conversation. We hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe and follow us for more engaging episodes. Until next time.